help you to shape your future career. The very first person who is going to help you with this is Stephen Barron. Stephen, he's here in the front seat. And Stephen is currently working as a senior front-end software engineer at the Pluralsight. His specialization is React and TypeScript. He is also very proficient with C# and Python, and he'll be talking about how he got there, what challenges he experienced, and what entrepreneurial skills he used to land the jobs he did. Stephen.
Thank you, Lana. Goodness, it's been probably 5 years. Oh, thank you. It's been like 5 years since I've presented in front of a group, so I'm a little nervous, but I'll do my best. So yeah, as Lana said, my name is Stephen Barron. I'm currently a front-end software engineer, and I wanted to make a presentation just about entrepreneurship, specifically in tech. So yeah, let's go ahead and move forward. So about me a little bit. So I went to ASU, but I actually came to CGCC back when I was in high school. I did a program called the ACE program. Is anyone here familiar with that? Show of hands. Nobody? No worries. It's basically just a program where you can take college courses during the summer while you're still in high school and kind of get a jump start on your, basically an associate's. So that was really cool. I ended up immediately moving into ASU after I graduated. I ended up being a 5-year student, even though I had the extra credits, which I'll get into, but before I moved into college, I did graphic design and video production, and I really thought I was going to go into like a video editing position. It was just something I was really passionate about during high school, and I was one of those like 4-year TV production students in high school, but for whatever reason that didn't really pan out. I think what ended up happening was I got into my first year and I tried out a couple of film courses, and they were really just not jiving with me. I really didn't like them. They really didn't feel like the right fit for me, and I was also at the moment doing CSE. So CSE is computer systems engineering. It's a little different from like a computer science degree. I would say there's a little bit more of an emphasis on like hardware. So things like microcontrollers, processors, graphic chips, those types of things were more of what we focused on in that degree. But I would say there's still probably like 80%. There's still like coding and computer science. There's still a good chunk of that. Ironically, I did the forbidden taboo you should never really do in college, which I transferred degrees in my third year. I was not happy with what I was doing when I got into my third year for whatever reason. So I like was thinking to myself, maybe I wanted to do more electrical, like hardware focus. So I ended up going into electrical engineering, and the answer to that question was no. It ended up being way harder than I ever anticipated. It was way more miserable for me. I took a really hard 300 level physics course. And somehow I got a C on that class. I have no idea how, but I think I got like an F on the final exam. It was one of those like courses where like an F is like passing, like with the curve. It was crazy. And I was just like, this is not for me. And then I actually kind of went full circle. I ended up finishing with a random art degree. So how did I end up here is kind of the weird question, but I'll get into that. But I ended up getting a degree called digital culture with a focus in media processing, which is a weird fluffy degree that basically just means arts, media, and engineering encompassed. And I did more like web development and like app development focus with some hardware projects. So it kind of landed me inside of the computer science realm, but it was still like an art degree. So it was, I don't know, it wasn't like the same as like a bachelor's of science, for example. As Lana mentioned, I'm a senior front-end engineer right now. I'm working at a company called Pluralsight. Has anyone here heard of Pluralsight, out of curiosity? One person back there? Cool, well, shout outs. So Pluralsight's an upskilling learning platform, so kind of think Khan Academy, but more focused for like engineers. So like helping them kind of like raise their skill set. I worked for that company, and we'll talk more about that moving forward. But and I've been in the field for a little over 6 years at this point. So I've been at 3 different jobs, which I'll talk about. And yeah, in my free time, when I'm not playing video games, I like to dabble with game development. So I use Unity. I've dabbled with some other engines like Unreal Engine and what is the new one, Godot, but I don't think I went really super deep into those, but I like to poke around with Unity from time to time. I'm really into cooking. I watch a lot of random Gordon Ramsay shows and cooking shows. I just like cooking. I think it's fun and therapeutic. And same kind of thing and reason why I play the piano. I think playing the piano is like a good outlet and just like a good way to chill. So yeah, that's about me. pictures of me. This one's when I was building my house, and then this one is, has anyone ever been to the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle? Anybody? One person. That place is dope. I would recommend going there if you're ever in Seattle. It's basically just like a conglomerate of a bunch of different pop culture icons and things. And I think this was like their sci-fi thing, but I think that place is amazing. If you ever have the chance to go, I would definitely go. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about my work background, and then Lana kind of suggested I talk a little bit more about like kind of how I got to where I am and like the steps in my career. So I'll definitely kind of dive into that more in this. I didn't really make a separate slide for that particular topic, but we'll just kind of freeball it. All right, so starting from right to left, I'll kind of walk you through my career journey. So I graduated college in 2019, May of 2019. You know, I was pretty aimless because I did a bunch of weird switching with my degree. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I kind of wanted to land in either the sphere of computer science or the other side, which would be like video editing and graphic design. I didn't really know like exactly where I wanted to land. I actually kind of wanted to be a UI UX engineer at first. For those not aware of that role, it's basically someone who focuses on the experience for the customer and ends up kind of mocking up and prototyping the designs for like the UI for like websites. So that was kind of my initial like knee-jerk reaction interest whenever I graduated. I never really thought I would come full circle back into like software engineering, but that was really where I was like pursuing and like putting a lot of my time and energy after graduating. I ended up getting a weird startup web development job, and to be completely honest with you, I was completely miserable. I only lasted 2 months there. It was a WordPress development job, and anyone here that's worked with WordPress will probably know that that application kind of sucks. And you're not really doing like authentic coding. It's more just like you're working with like a bunch of templating, and you're working on the world's slowest product that loads like 10 seconds to load a page, just like every time you make a change, and it's just the most frustrating, painful experience. So I didn't really last very long there. I ended up reapplying to a job I was working at part-time when I was in college, and that job specialized in educational tech. Have any of you heard of Primavera? You've probably seen the signs on the I-10 and stuff. Yeah, so the company's called StrongMind. That's the first slide here. StrongMind is a company that focuses on building content that helps support like content creators, not like YouTube content creators, but like content creators like people who write content for courses. We basically built tools that would help them make that content faster, more efficient, easier for users to understand, like students, for example, and easier for like the people actually building the content to use the app that we're creating. So it was almost like a templating tool that we built. And it was actually really cool. They work directly with Primavera, so they're sister companies. So StrongMind and Primavera are pretty deeply integrated together. And with StrongMind, I would say it was a really great experience for me because like I said, I worked there part-time, so I was really aware of the product. And I actually had the experience as a user creating content at the time, because that's what I did part-time, was I helped publish and create their content for them. So I kind of had like that backwards perspective as a user moving in as a developer now. And that was my first job. I was a full stack engineer at the time, so their tech stack was like .NET, C#, and they used a bunch of different front-end stuff. But I would say, I would say I was pretty junior, pretty green. Like I didn't really know a whole lot moving into that job. And I would say the first like 6 months, I almost felt useless because it was just me standing behind someone's shoulder being like, oh, what'd you do there? What's that for, So a lot of that was just, I don't know, it was an interesting, unique experience I didn't really expect. But after my 6 months, I think I kind of got enough confidence and comfort, and that really helped me kind of propel me in my career. So yeah, I think the general expectation, if any of you here decide to become like software engineers in the future or what have you, is, there isn't really a big expectation, but you just need to show up. You need to come prepared. Like you're gonna feel like you're doing literally nothing, and that's kind of the reality of what a junior software engineer is. Something I learned really early on in my career from one of my managers was, your first job, you're really focused on like your individual growth, and then that sphere of influence gets bigger as you kind of move up the ladder for like a career, like as a software engineer career ladder. So like a junior is like individual growth, a mid-level is more like team growth, like focusing on the team. Once you get to senior, that's more of like the whole like department growth, like everyone, where you're really helping, like that's where your value is provided. And then once you get to like principal, it's like the whole company. Like you're basically helping the whole company kind of thing. So that was something I learned really early on, and that really helped alleviate a lot of the like imposter syndrome I was feeling at the time, just the feeling of like, I'm not really contributing like the way I want to. And that's completely normal. As much as that sounds weird and unnatural, that's just the way it is for like a junior. So I was there for about a year and a half. I ended up getting promoted to mid-level within like 9 months or something. And then I ended up applying to a new job. So you'll notice a trend here. I mentioned that this company is an educational tech company. My second job was a second educational tech company. I don't know why, something about that field kind of just, it was always drawn to me. I've always really enjoyed just like the passion people have for like educational stuff, whatever it may be. So I ended up working on an application, a company called Campus Logic. And Campus Logic is actually based in Chandler, same with Strongmind, I forgot to mention. They recently got acquired by a really big East Coast education conglomerate called like Ellucian. I don't know if it's common here, but it's a pretty big, it's almost as big as like, I'm forgetting the name of the company right now, but no worries. So yeah, Campus Logic, their whole kind of specialization was mostly on the financial experience for a student getting into college. So they're more like, think of like, they're more focused on like the actual like initial, like people are usually focused on the educational, like the content you're actually learning, but they're more focused on like how do people actually get into classes and how do they get butts and seats kind of thing. Like how do we actually get someone to like be able to go through that college journey and pay for college. And they had, I think like at the time I was there, they had like 8 different applications that all did kind of different things. One of them was focused on like the FAFSA experience. So how many of you have used FAFSA? I'm sure everyone here at this point, yeah. FAFSA is pretty common, but they wanted to kind of expedite that process so that it's not so painful because it's a really slow and tedious, annoying process. So they built an application to help like both sides of the coin, let students applying for financial aid, as well as the people in the office that are actually like submitting the forms and like finalizing all that part of it. So I worked on that application. I actually was tech lead on one of the projects. I was still mid-level at the time, so being like a leader on a project at that point was actually really exciting for me. I worked directly with someone else. We built something that was basically like Patreon, but for like students. It was called Sponsored Scholar, which I think they actually deprecated after I left. It's neither here or there. But Sponsored Scholar is basically, it was just a crowdfunding like Patreon where you could basically tell, like almost like a sales pitch, like pitch your story of like what you're doing. And we'll help back your like education basically. So that was that application. And I wouldn't say that one was super successful. I think the other one that this company is really known for, and I don't know if Chandler-Gilbert uses, I know ASU used to use it. There's one called Scholarship Universe, that's like their big one. Basically, you fill out a bunch of different fields of like your background, who you are, like what you're passionate about, what you're studying, and then they'll basically spit back a bunch of scholarships that you like are qualified for. And that's really useful because if any of you have ever done like scholarship applying, you know how tedious it can be, and you usually have to go on like a bunch of different pages. But this one, I believe, scrapes all of those pages and basically returns everything in one spot. So it's really simple and improves that process. So if it is, I don't know if Chandler-Gilbert uses it, but it is, I would highly recommend it. And now we're back to where I'm at in the present. So I'm at a company called Pluralsight, another educational tech company, but I actually work on a different side of the coin. So they have 3 main products. One of them we don't really talk about, but 2 of them. The first one is called Skills. So Skills is basically their learning platform, their upskilling platform. So anyone that's like, hey, I don't really know how I'm going to progress in my career, usually it'll be like a good opportunity to send them resources like videos or like, written notes to kind of give them guides like, here's how to do software architecture or whatever it may be to move you up in your career. Or like, here's how you could build an entire backend, whatever it may be. So I don't work on that product. I work on a product called Flow, which you can see right here. Flow is a little bit of a different experience, and it's actually kind of ironic because the product we were building was basically meant for engineers and like engineering managers, as well as some like executive level people that work at companies. And the whole point of that project was basically to provide data analytics so people can kind of know how they're trending in their career. And it helped them like, it was another form of helping them upskill and grow in their career, but through like metrics that kind of show them how they're doing. And I want to point out, it was not meant to be like invasive, like, oh, this guy only wrote 100 lines of code, we should fire him. It's not like that. It's like, it's more meant to be like bigger picture, like higher level, like understanding of like how someone's trending and like how they can like, whether or not they're like, doing well as an engineer and like how they can get better. It wasn't really focused on like the nitpicky, like, oh, this guy only wrote 3 lines of code or whatever it may be. So we were very, very intentional about that. We were also very intentional about not stack ranking, meaning we're not like, hey, this isn't your best engineer, here's your second best engineer. We don't really do that because that's not the whole point of what we're trying to do with this application. It's more for like the bigger picture, how can you improve your org as a whole, not the other way around. So that was my career. I wanted to talk briefly about just like how I got to where I'm at today, and then we'll move on. But yeah, I think I kind of mentioned it with like the junior explanation, but showing up every day and just coming prepared to learn is very important. I think the thing that really helped me early on after my first year was realizing that you can't know everything. I think what a lot of junior engineers really run into is they want to know every single detail about every little thing immediately, and that's not realistic because there's just so much information and things to understand out there from like the software scope. Excuse me. There's just so much to know and understand that it really isn't like feasible for you to like know everything. So it's better to kind of like pick up on patterns or just like smaller details of things versus like I have to know everything about this one thing before I can move on to the next thing. And what you'll notice when you take that approach instead of like the I have to know everything approach is you'll start to pick up on the patterns more often and you'll get like a lot quicker and snappier about like how you learn new skills. Because you'll be like, oh, this reminds me of when I did this last year or whatever, versus like, I've never touched this before, I'm a little intimidated, but I want to dive into everything before I even get started. It's more just like jump into the ocean and then figure it out after, which might sound silly, but that's the way you learn fast and you learn quick and you grow fast. As far as getting promoted, it's what you would expect. You just need to make sure you do the work that you're asked of, and in some cases you want to try to exceed that work. I was kind of an overachiever in my career, so I always tried to go above and beyond what was expected, and I tried to get my tickets released quick. But that's not everybody. Some people want to kind of take it the slow burn and work their way up and like learn at their own pace. I just wanted to kind of chase the next level. And yeah, that's basically it for the job section. So moving on. So one thing I want to mention, and actually I'm going to go back really quick. One thing I want to mention, and this is pretty like common any job you get in tech, is at the end of the day, what you're really doing is you're solving problems. And I find this part really fun because to me, it's like I'm solving a puzzle. And I don't just mean like I'm solving a problem like, oh, there's a bug in my code and I need to figure out what's wrong with the bug. It's more like we're solving the deeper intricacy problem like at a higher level of like what we're actually like building these applications for. So when I talk about like this content creation one, right? The first thing I mentioned was like, we're building this for the content people that actually build the content for the courses, but we're also building it for the students. And that's something you should always have in the back of your head when you're designing things and building things. It's never really, I'm just building this because whatever. There's always a reason, right? Like, why am I actually working on this thing? Same thing for the scholarship universe I mentioned as well. We're targeting students that are looking for financial like aid and like financial help for their college. And that was all of the products that Campus Logic worked on. And then similarly, as I mentioned, I'm building that last project for engineering managers, engineers, and then sometimes an executive person that might take a look and get kind of a bigger picture idea of how their teams are trending and doing. So all of these have a purpose, and we're going to break that down and go into it. And I'm actually going to specifically go into like one particular feature that I worked on last year, and then just kind of go through that whole story of like what I did, and like I was actually the tech lead on the project, so I have like full context and like knowledge of that whole thing. So yep, so this is the common denominator, the thing that everything kind of lands into. And this, this will apply to entrepreneurship, this will apply to just like general tech stuff. And this will even apply like at a smaller level, like actually solving problems like on your day-to-day for like working on things, but we'll kind of focus on like a higher level for now. So one of the issues that my company ran into with Flow was we had a lot of different reports that reported quantitative data. So things like, what are my coding days, like how many days per week am I coding, which was usually around like 3 for a lot of people, so that was kind of the trend that you would normally notice. Other things would be like time to merge PRs. PRs are like the code that's kind of like in a rough draft state that you get reviewed. So, just those kinds of metrics. And we had so many of those metrics, but we didn't really tell the full picture. So we were asking ourselves, how can we tell the full picture of like someone's experience? So let's say someone's coding data says 2 out of 5 instead of 3 out of 5, right? What does that mean? Like, what's the background behind that? It could just be like, okay, this guy's slacking this week, but I don't think that's the full picture, right? There's something else there. Maybe he's feeling burnt out because of something that happened in his real life. No one really knows the answer. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we need some way of tracking qualitative data, which is this right here. And qualitative data is more like, it's not like opinionated, but it's more like based off of your senses, like what can you see, what can you feel, like what's going on, versus quantitative where it's just like hard numbers, like here's the value for like this value, and this is like, it doesn't really on its own tell you what's going on. So, yep, so what we came up with was something called Developer Sentiment Survey, which was basically a tool where you can push a survey, and then the survey will basically get automatically like messaged out. We use something called Slack, which is like work, Discord, or whatever you want to call it. But so Slack is basically, we would basically send out our notifications via Slack. It would be like to a team channel or like via DMs, and then people would just be asked to fill out a survey about like how they're kind of feeling about like their teams. Now, one of the cool things about this application is we actually started like an effort to create something called the Developer Success Lab, which was basically a group of individuals, a bunch of really, really smart individuals who have like PhDs. And they really wanted to hammer in the developer experience from like a how are developers feeling about their jobs point of view. And they came up with 4 different pillars to kind of like assess like basically like software engineer success, and like what it takes to like help someone who's struggling like get into like the right path, basically. And then we use that back to research in order to help us build our developer success our sentiment survey application. So moving forward. So again, I just want to kind of break down from like a tech lead standpoint and like someone who's been through the whole experience. So we started this project last year, early 2024, like right in January. And we were told right away by our management team and like the investors, like, we want this done in 6 months. So that was kind of a crazy feat for us. So for context, I'm on like about a 10-person team at the time of building this. So it was a little bit of a, everyone was kind of freaking out at first, like how are we actually gonna build this thing? But I would say 6 months ended up actually being pretty perfect, like in retrospect, but it was a little like daunting, like the first kind of like knee jerk, like, oh, you need this in 6 months. And then we're like, okay. So usually the process goes for a lot of people kind of starting a new product is first is like the ideation phase, like coming up with ideas, right? So how can we solve this problem? Well, we already knew we had the Developer Success Lab. We know they have their 4 pillars of success, which, sorry, I don't have them memorized right now. I would tell you if I did, but we knew we wanted to kind of like slam those things together somehow. We just didn't know exactly how yet. So we basically, the first kind of idea was just like, I think it was just like show them the pillars, but then we were like, well, that kind of still lands in the quantitative because we're not really like getting any like sort of like personal like messaging or feedback. Okay, no worries. And then the question follows like, who are we building this for? So again, we're building this for like engineers mostly, like individual contributors that are actually writing code on a day-to-day basis. So that focus is really, excuse me, that's really like the main, like who we're doing this for. We obviously want to talk about like blockers and issues. So like, what is something that can go wrong? What's something that can really like mess us up if we don't pay attention to it now? And then like, what are things that might trip us up in the future? And then this is the most important one in my opinion. So like the initial planning phase, you want to come up with a really solidified MVP. MVP stands for minimum viable product. So it's usually like the most bare bones version of the product that still functions and does everything that's promised, but it doesn't have like all the bells and whistles and fancy features. So you really want to like iron out like what's your MVP. Because the beauty of the type of development people do nowadays is it's iterative, which is the very bottom point. You want to make sure you build something that's kind of bare bones so that you can expand on it and you can build on top of it more easily. And then the last kind of question that I didn't mention was how are we going to build this thing? So that's like, that's always down to like technical implementation. We happen to have a tried and true tech stack that we're using already, so we were just like, we're going to go this route. I think I'm coming close on time, so I'm gonna go a little quicker. So here's some examples of like our ideation phase. So our designers will kind of mock up a design, and then this is the conversations we kind of have, the little bubbles there. They basically represent like chats we had about certain features and like pieces of the puzzle of what we're building. So this is kind of like what that process looks like. And then as far as like planning and mapping out work, this is like our board we use to basically represent like the work we're doing. So as you can see, a lot of these tickets are already like wrapped up and done. But these are basically like programming tickets that you would pick up and work on. Kind of think of like sticky notes on a bulletin board that you grab and you're like, I'm gonna do this. Like the same idea. So key takeaways, and I'm gonna run through this quick. I think the highlights that we had and something that I experienced was, I think we did a great job of understanding trade-offs. So a trade-off is basically like, we can go this route, but we can't really go that route because of this issue. So understanding trade-offs and making sure you make the right conscious decisions is important. Don't overpromise on features. Don't ever be like, oh yeah, we could definitely get that in. Like make sure you push back when it makes sense. Like if someone's like, hey, can we fit this in like last second? Make sure you be like, no, we can't. We're sticking to the MVP, don't add more. Keep track of potential future issues. So like, excuse me. One thing that you should always do is just kind of keep tabs of like, okay, this might be a problem later. Like you're working on something and you're like, okay, that's gonna be a problem like maybe like in like a week. So we should definitely like address that and like look into that. Maintain scope, kind of back to like no overpromising. Make sure you communicate. So, you know, make sure you're always like letting people know what's going on, especially since my team works remote. We're always posting on Slack about any sort of update just to make sure everyone knows what's going on. And I would say I'm pretty proud of our quick turnaround for a pretty large project where we built 5 pages in 6 months. It was a really big feat, but it was really cool. And then last slide. Some of the things that we could have learned and improved on. You should always give your backend team enough runway, meaning you shouldn't really like start like the front end portion until the backend is more solidified, because then you're just kind of writing skeleton code and then your backend doesn't really do anything. Or you don't really have a front end that does anything because you don't have a backend. Making sure you document things. So if you ever run into something that you're like, this might be useful for someone to know later on, like a year from now, like make sure you document that. We were constantly changing designs, and I think it's better to iron out those designs as early as possible. A lot of that comes down to just the timeline we had, but usually it's best to like be like, this is the final design, it's not gonna change. And there were times where we would build something and then they were like, oh, this is actually not what we want anymore. And they changed it. Do it right the first time. Basically just referring to like, you wanna make sure you're conscious and like trying to put out the best quality work you can the first time. Don't really like rush it. There were times where we had to rush just because of the deadline, like I said, and that ended up creating like a kind of crappy, like some crappy issues that we had to come back to anyway, and it ended up just adding more time to our fluff. So it's better to just do it right the first time. We tried out a bunch of new technologies, which I would be wary of. I don't think it's a bad thing to try new things because it keeps products exciting and like fresh, but sometimes those just create more of a burden than like an actual benefit to like what you're building. So I would suggest just being wary of experimenting. And I think a lot of people towards the end of the project were feeling burnout, which, you know, you don't want your engineering team feeling burnout. So you should always be conscious of that. And this is kind of the final project. This is like what we ended up, look at the pillars. So there's all the different pillars, and this is what we ended up building. And that's it. So now we're on the Q&A stage.
We have time for just a couple of questions. Are there any questions from anybody? I'll run the mic to you. Any students? If not, Nick, you're our filler. And we have it live streamed, so we need a mic going.
Hi, Nick Tomashot. How do you go about understanding what your customer needs versus what they tell you they want?
That's a great question. So we're in a weird advantage. We had a weird advantage because we're all engineers and we kind of know what engineers want, but there's kind of a famous saying of like, you're not the customer, right? So you don't want to be like the end all be all like enforcer of like, this is what I'm building and this is the way it's going to be because I'm an engineer and this is what I would want. The way you do that is you just get a lot of different customer calls and you really talk to a lot of different people. So you would just sit in on some customer calls or you would work together with a bunch of people and just kind of, you know, just note take and keep track of like what all, like kind of a common denominator and like line of like what a lot of different people want. So what we ended up doing, like I said, is we already knew we had the advantage with the Career Success Lab, so we knew we wanted to integrate that immediately. And we needed to, we needed to draw the line in the sand somewhere. We can't just build everything everyone wants, because that's not realistic, and everyone wants something special that maybe we can't do or what have you. So, we had kind of a hunch of where we wanted to go with it, but then we met with customers, and that kind of helped like solidify the final kind of pieces. And then, once you kind of iron out that MVP version of your project, you can start iterating and adding things on top of that, like that might be urgent or like might have priority for your customers, or if it's like additional features or add-ons or what have you, which we've actually already done. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. And go ahead and give him another round of applause, please. We have a survey QR code, so please take the survey. We'll get that up in a second.
Sorry, I don't know where my water went.
We have another speaker starting here in just a minute. If you do need to leave, show your survey that you've completed it on your way out for a gift. Otherwise, stay for the next speaker, and when you do leave at the very end, show your that you finished the survey. We'll have a survey after each speaker. Stephen, or workshop number one?
Workshop number one.
Workshop number
Yeah.
one's good. CGCC.
Yeah. So please show the results of the survey, not the results, but the fact that you've taken it, and grab some memorabilia. There's t-shirts, there's some notepads, something else. All right. Has everybody been able to do the scan? Can I switch? Okay. So our next presenter is Eric Talati. Here he is. Eric has journeyed through his ups and downs of data and engineering world, from the excitement of the startups to the challenges of layoffs at big tech. Along the way, he gathered valuable life lessons, blending innovation with resilience to make a meaningful impact across industries. Please meet Eric.
All right, hey everybody, I'm Eric. I am a data engineer by trade, a solutions engineer by title. And I was asked today to speak about my illustrious career in technology, which probably would have been surprising to me in college because I was supposed to become a veterinarian. So how many of you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do with your careers? Anybody? And how many of that is in data and AI? Good choice. I was expecting. That is mid-presentation.
Is it yours?
Yeah, so I, again, was expecting to become a veterinarian. It turns out, like, when I talk to a lot of people coming out of college, they think, like, oh, I need to pick. Am I going to become a software engineer? Am I going to become a data scientist? You know, I'm locked in. This is my career. It's for good. The reality is your career is going to be a lot more like a roller coaster. It's going to take some weird twists and turns. You're going to crash along the way, which I guess maybe shouldn't happen on a roller coaster. But you know, it's going to be unexpected, and hopefully as I kind of go through my career journey, you'll sort of see that. Yeah, so again, I started my career as a biologist in a laboratory. Turns out when you're working in science, there's a lot of data, and I was always good with Excel and spreadsheets and things like that, so everyone just sort of started throwing that kind of work at me and made me do that because they didn't want to. And so I started kind of building out the lab data and managing the data. And I had a good friend of mine who also worked there, and he's like, hey, I'm kind of learning how databases work and all that sort of thing. Do you want to help out? I was like, sure, why not? And so as kind of career progressed, that laboratory ended up getting shut down. My friend had jumped over to a career as a database developer in tech, and he was like, hey, you should follow me. And I was like, all right, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So this is layoff number 1, by the way. It's going to become a trend. So I joined him, and this is a good lesson, is that find good mentors and just listen to them and learn from them, because there's a lot of really smart people out there, and you know, they can teach you a lot. So yeah, so I kind of followed him. I made that jump, complete career transition. I started working at a financial institution with him, and I learned a lot. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, I just came out of a biology lab. I was barely learning about databases. And now I was hired on as a database administrator and developer. So I did that for a couple years. I really got like a good feel for it. Things started to kind of get a little bit boring in that sort of, you know, imagine cubicle farmland of office building, and that's kind of the situation it was. And I looked around and I saw there were a lot of people who had been there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they're kind of doing the same thing. The technology stack was very sort of what you would expect, like, you know, old on-prem systems. This was kind of when cloud was coming up. Azure, AWS were sort of just launching. There's a lot of cool modern data things going on, and I kind of was like, I had to make the decision: do I want to kind of stick here with this comfortable job where I kind of know what I'm doing and everything is, you know, kind of predictable every day, or do I want to make that leap and go into a more you know, push my boundaries, learn a lot of new things, you know, start learning Python. At the time, I mostly worked in SQL, you know, learning Python, learning Scala, you know, learning Hadoop and large data systems. Big data was kind of the buzzword at the time, and doing that sort of thing. And so I was kind of made the decision, yeah, I want to do that. And it's kind of tricky. There's going to be times in your career where you want that comfortable job because you've got things going on, having kids or getting married, or just life is making you focus on that. And then there's going to be times where you're like, man, I want to do something fun and interesting and exciting. So this was just one of those times when I just wanted to do something a bit more exciting. Yeah, so that's a representation of working in a financial institution. So again, I made the leap and I found a company I applied for that was kind of one of the more startup style, right? It was big open office building, lots of ping pong tables, and everyone was a big family and having fun. It was kind of what I pictured at the time, of like the exact opposite of what I was in. And so I was like, well, this seems maybe more what I want in a career, like a more fun kind of office environment and things like that. And it was great. I started using AWS, started using Azure. I was a data engineer there. So I started working on large data systems, importing massive amounts of data, working with data science teams to build out predictive analytics and things like that. So it was a really cool environment, lots going on. And so I'm going to pause to talk about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is when you go somewhere and you think, man, I am in over my head, everyone is way smarter than me. This is probably going to be something common throughout your entire career. Even today, I still feel this like every day at work. So it's something you kind of got to deal with. You know, different people will figure out different ways. But the reality is everybody around you is also feeling the exact same thing, that they're in over their head and that you were smarter than them. So it's just something to kind of be aware of, and just, you know, when you're feeling like, man, why did I take this job? I have no idea I'm going to get fired tomorrow. Yeah, that's imposter syndrome, and yeah, we all kind of deal with it. So I'm working at this great startup. I think this is everything I want. And we get layoff number 2 happens. So again, yeah, that whole idea of like the whole fun family startup culture doesn't really matter when business says we need to cut headcount. So again, another layoff happened. At this point, I'm kind of thinking, okay, what do I want to do? I've tried sort of the traditional corporation. I've tried the fun startup. Maybe I'll start doing my own thing. And I started to think about doing freelancing consulting. So I started to do that. I worked for a number of just small little startups, helping them with their data solutions and things like that. And you'll find when you go kind of that route of what am I going to do on my own, unless you could join a larger consulting company and that'll handle this for you, but if you're not, you have to do a lot of marketing and sales yourself. So, everyone says network, network, network. That's true. Networking is very powerful. But when you kind of think about it, it's kind of like, what do I do? Do I go, to a big place with 100 people and go talk to all of them and try to make friends and hope that when they have jobs or work, they remember me? That's not really my style. I'm never going to be good at that or want to do that. So I was like, well, what other routes can I take? So I started a YouTube channel. It's called No Queries. You can go check it out. And in this channel, I just talked about data. I was like, I have learned a lot over my career, and I just want to, push out this knowledge. So I started making videos about what is a database, what is a data warehouse, what is a data lake, what is big data, a bunch of stuff like that. And just sort of put it out there. Didn't really know what I was doing, kind of learned out the video thing. Medium is another popular one for blogging. You can go that route too to kind of get attention. But I kind of enjoyed, making videos, so I'm the YouTube route. And like one thing when it comes to like this kind of thing, people kind of think, if you do YouTube, I'm going to become, monetized through YouTube. And that's not really, there's some people that do it, but it's rare. Most people doing things like YouTube or Medium, it's more of a marketing funnel to get people to bring you work, so that you can actually get paid through doing, your normal work. It's more just a marketing channel to get attention. So that's kind of what I was doing. This is the attempt I made. And it worked pretty well. I was getting, a variety of just sort of feedback coming in. A few jobs here and there. People saw this, they wanted consulting, they wanted to learn, they wanted, they saw a video about one topic and they wanted to know more. So they reached out and hired me to do some work. But also through that, Microsoft also reached out for consulting. Which is really cool. Most of my career is built on Microsoft Stack. So I was like, oh, cool, I can go to the mothership. And so I started working with them. And my thought was, it's another consulting thing. I'll go do that for a little bit, a couple months here and there. But I immediately kind of hit it off with the team there. And they brought me on as full-time right away. So another kind of career twist. I was like, oh, this whole consulting thing seems to be working. Nope, now I'm back to full-time employee. But it was really cool. Like I said, the team was awesome. The project was mixed reality. So, and I was hired as a data architect to build out basically their analytics platform for their device manufacturing. So what that means is when they build a mixed reality headset, there's about a dozen different factories that different parts are made in, and basically they pull IoT data from every factory test station into a large data warehouse, which then they did reporting on to prove each device met specifications. So my job was to basically build out that platform, my team. So yeah, I did that again. I was like, okay, well, this is great. This is actually kind of the kind of company I wanted to work for because, it kind of fit. It wasn't boring. The work was interesting. The people were fun. The company was good to you, but it wasn't sort of like hey, we're a, family startup. And it was really weird too. Prior to this one, I was working at consulting at a 10-person startup to a 300,000 person Microsoft. So it was really just sort of a big shift in, type of corporation I was working for. But yeah, so that was really fun. That was going great. And I was like, oh, Microsoft seems like a place I can retire in. But guess what? Layoff number 3 happens. So I get laid off at Microsoft. They cut the mixed reality program budget basically, and canceled that whole sort of section of the program. So I was kind of back out there. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just pivot back to doing consulting. But before I could even do that, a company called Snowflake, which builds a modern data platform, reached out to me like right away and said, hey, we know you're looking and we've seen some of the stuff you've done. So hey, do you want to join us? And so if you don't know Snowflake, Snowflake is a data company. It's sort of one of those modern data technologies built on the cloud that had got me interested in going this route anyway. So I was like, yeah, definitely. And what's cool about this job, and also unexpected, is that I work in sales now, which had you told me, a guy who just wanted to sit in a cubicle and develop stuff, that I would be sort of in sales and working with customers and on the front line every day, I would be like, you're out of your mind. Like, I would never do that. But in this role, it's kind of neat because since they know I do like some of the content stuff, what I actually do is I do a lot of like video and sort of internal content for our sales teams to keep them up to date on what's going on with Microsoft. I work on the sort of the Azure partnership side of things, and what's going on internally. I also work with marketing for go-to-market for external things, so I get to do some of the fun content stuff, building videos, writing blogs, and things like that in my day-to-day job. So that's pretty cool, and it's definitely a departure, which again is another sort of lesson, is that development or engineering and programming is sort of one aspect of everything. It's really good if you know how a whole company operates. So like in my current role, I do some of that. I do build POCs, I build demos, I build a little bit of technology. I'm no longer on a product engineering side, but I still do that in my day-to-day. I also work with marketing. I know the go-to-market campaigns. I know the go-to-market strategies. I work with sales. I know what customers need. I talk to customers. I do that every day. So I kind of get this big picture of everything that's going on when it comes to a software company, which is pretty cool, and definitely unexpected compared to where I started. Yeah, so those are kind of the big lessons I've learned. Mentors are awesome, and you should use them as much as possible. They're also key networking to help you find jobs. I have a few key ones. Microsoft has actually invited me back already, I think after laying me off, because I have good mentor at that team reached out and was like, hey, I know this team is hiring and you'd be a great fit. Always keep learning, I think it's been mentioned. Take the opportunity. If somebody came along and said, do you want to learn about databases? I'd be like, no, I got stuff to do today. This whole career path would have just ended right there. So there's always something to learn. There's always something to jump into. There's always more to do. And then, yeah, don't consider, just one career aspect. I would be a software engineer, right? There's product management. There's marketing. There's sales. There's QA, there's support, there's like all these different roles that make a software company actually work. So don't just kind of lock yourself into like, I want to do this one thing. Make sure you know all the different options out there, because one might fit you better than other ones do anyway. So, especially if you get into that job, you're in that imposter syndrome situation and it doesn't really get better and you start thinking like, man, maybe I'm just not good at this. You don't have to like do something crazy. You just, maybe consider there are different roles that are adjacent that you might excel in different ways. Yeah, so that's about all I had for today. So I guess Q&A, we can answer some questions. Yeah, anything anybody is interested in.
Hello.
Hi, so actually looking into getting into data analytics, I was wondering if it's a viable option to kind of teach yourself, because like you said, you're on YouTube all the time, or you got a YouTube channel. There's all sorts of YouTube channels out there teaching this stuff. Do you guys ever hire people that are like just completely self-taught, or is a degree going to make a big difference?
Absolutely. Degrees always help a bit. It certainly gives you a head start. So for me, my degree was in biology. So when I started at my first job as a database administrator, I was self-taught on a lot of things, and I felt like I had to catch up a lot. There were a lot of just people, I called them the CS people, who had a lot more background than I did around sort of, I knew the data side really well, but I didn't understand, you go into a meeting with the larger IT team and you'd be like, oh, and the network people are talking. I'm like, I have no idea what those guys are talking about. I had no exposure to that sort of world. And so I did have to do a lot of like, go home from work and be like, all right, they said these 3 things today. Let me go learn about that today. So yeah, definitely advantages to self-learning, and even with a degree, it's a foundation. You're still going to have to be learning constantly, right? Especially in data and AI, like things are changing daily. We just 3 weeks ago, I didn't know what DeepSeek was. Yesterday, we announced public preview of DeepSeek on Snowflake. So now I've got to be a DeepSeek expert. So yeah, that was this weekend. I got to dig into that. So there's always something new. There's always some other new technology, new thing coming out that you've got to go learn about. And then especially in a customer-facing role, I might need to tomorrow. I've got to go be an expert in this. So yeah, definitely self-learning is essential.
Other questions? Let me get you the mic.
I think I just missed part of it, was just how did you learn all of this? Because I know you discussed that with because you're
Yeah.
like, I'm in a lab. Now I know everything about AI. So
Yeah, so I don't know everything. I make it up as I go, which is most people in AI. But no, so yeah, it's a variety of things. When I first started in databases, I think I got a CD with how to do SQL on it. Was the first thing I did. I found it on, I don't know, Amazon or something. It's like, all right, I guess I'll do this. So a mixture of things. A lot of times on YouTube, a Pluralsight was one, was big. It's big within the Microsoft ecosystem. Code camps, things like that. There's a lot of free resources on this line. There's sometimes you do paid ones. Mentorships are a good one where you just find somebody who knows the area you're in and might have interest in time and just being like I said, the guy who taught me the initial stuff was just like, I don't know, he went and learned it. I don't know where he learned it from. And then he was like, hey, want to go to Barnes & Noble and sit down and learn about databases? It's like, sure, I'm unemployed. So yeah, a variety of paths. Today I have a lot more assets because, through my company I need to stay up to date to promote things. So now I have a lot more resources today. But honestly, I still spend a lot of time on YouTube or various places just learning stuff. Or Medium's good too if you're more a reader than video person, but more, I guess, auditory video.
We have time for a couple more questions.
So what, I guess, kind of skills or traits would you recommend that we develop if we want to follow a similar path to what you did?
There's the obvious ones. If you want to do data, learn SQL, learn Python. But other than that, soft skills. A million times soft skills. That's, I've known a lot of people who are the best programmers you'll ever meet, who didn't really progress very far just because they didn't develop soft skills. Like I said, learning product. If you're product engineering, as much as you might not like PMs, product managers, they're important. You got to learn them. They know the customers. Learn your customers. Learn to build value. If you're not building value, you're building junk. And the only way you can know if you're building something valuable is if you talk to people, you get feedback, you learn how to interact, you do iterative process of hey, I built this, does this look good? Instead of I built this, use it. So it's a lot more of those soft skills of how to get feedback, how to work with people, things like that. Because it's always going to be team environment, right? You're always going to be working in a software team. You might, I guess if you really want to just program and not deal with other people, be a co-founder of a startup with somebody with a lot of money. That's the only people I've ever known that were able to just sit down and build and had to have no feedback, no interaction, just we got to get this out in 6 months or the funding dries up. Go hard. But if you're not doing that, you're going to be working on a team. You're going to be working within a larger product with strategic values and things like that.
Other questions? Nick, no question? No. All right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Eric. We need the survey up, and we do have a gift for you, Eric. We gave Stephen his. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time. Make sure to do the survey before you leave, please. The survey is coming up on a QR code, And then as you leave, if you show your survey that you completed it, there's some swag outside the door. I need somebody over there giving it away. Okay, awesome. Otherwise, we have another speaker coming in just a couple of minutes.
Stone, which is up in Scottsdale, Arizona. She's launched niche marketing for better market share along with brand recognition. She has introduced a new product line that has positioned Durango Stone as an industry leader. Prior to Durango Stone, Anita was the founder of Asti Life. She created a successful online skincare company with award-winning products. Her products are known as Miracle in a Bottle, solutions for skin disorders. She has mentioned startups and participated in the local radio show bi-weekly. She's also the founder of Santa Cruz Children's Charities. She uses this charity to improve children's lives locally and globally. She has raised over $35,000 annually for children's shows and clothing during the holiday season. She also created a Boo Boo Bear, a Goodwill ambassador traveling worldwide to promote acceptance through school and interactions. She has authored 4 books on anti-bullying and self-esteem, and she was also invited by the United Nations member to travel to Honduras to teach anti-bullying in school. This was a life-changing experience for both her and her son. We have a little video clip to show some of her adventures. Did I not hit it right? Hold on. Here we go.
Hi there, my name is Anita Telle, and I grew up in Norway. And so right after I graduated college with a degree in business. Can you guys all hear me? Okay. A business degree, and then I came to the United States. I came to the United States because I wanted to learn the language and, you know, just check out the different country. I ended up being here, and I've been here ever since the 1980s. So anyway, so I started up in the beginning, a friend of mine, and we started importing leather bags from Singapore. And we brought them into the United States. We sold them, found a niche marketing, and we niche market for them, and we sold them all over stores in Marin County, that's over Golden Gate Bridge. And we sold them there. So we kind of got introduced to, you know, tariffs, getting introduced to what it means to import from other countries, forecasting, which pretty much means that if you're going to sell something in Christmas and you're going to make a lot of money selling during the Christmas season, you better plan ahead and make the orders in September. So a lot of things that we did there was quite interesting. Anyway, one day, my friend's grandmother, she was a member of CCA, California Cosmetology Association, and she said, would you guys consider, my friend and I, would you guys consider helping out at a big event? And there was 10,000 hairdressers that were at this big event, and there was a manufacturer that was coming from Southern California, and he didn't have anybody helping him with sales. So my friend and I, we helped him out with his sales, and after a while, he said to us, when it was time to leave after 2 days, he said, are you guys interested in starting up a distributorship? Well, I kind of, since I was a little girl selling candy and lemonade at home at 8 years old, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Is that feeling inside you that you really want to be independent, you really want to do something, and you want to do it for yourself? So anyway, so I started that, and so then when she said that, and we went to this event, and we had this opportunity. So what we did is we borrowed $10,000 from our uncle, and we started up this company, and it was called Salon Technology. Well, and so what happened is we started up selling skincare and hair care products. This was hair care products from the trunk of our cars. So we had our cars, we had these little plastic bags, and we bought $10,000 worth of product, and with that we got the exclusive distributor rights from San Francisco up to Oregon border and back in and into Reno, Nevada. We started with going from salon to salon, and do what's called cold calling. Cold calling is when you go in and you introduce yourself and your product, and nobody else know anything about you. A warm calling would be if you already have a contact and you know someone there. So that's the difference between a cold call and a cold call and a warm call. I started reading some books. One of the best books that I think kind of is like the Bible of entrepreneurship is Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's an old book. It was written in 1937, but it is an amazing book, and it teaches a lot of things about what you would want to do. Another book, Dale Carnegie's, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a brilliant book for anybody that wants to get into entrepreneurship and wants to do these things. Being an entrepreneur is a lonely business. It really is, because not everybody wants to work for 60 to 70, maybe 80 hours a week, maybe working every weekend. But when you have that goal and you have that purpose and you know what you want to be and you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to do this, it kind of makes it easier. So after Salon Technology and starting doing the products, we started growing pretty rapidly, from having bags in our trunks to having now products underneath our bed, to then suddenly you have a garage that you have full of products. You go out there and you work. Suddenly our business, we grew, and we had like 20 employees. At this time we met a couple from Santa Cruz. They were doing the same thing as us with Lanza. Lanza was the product line. It's a hair care product. And so we merged our companies. Now we are much bigger. We started growing. We grew the business. And the beauty industry and distribution is a fun thing to do. There is a lot of competition, and you have to find that little niche. What is it that makes me different than anybody else? My competition, there's a lot of competition. We had Paul Mitchell, we had all these big companies, Sassoon, all these big companies that you're hearing about. We have to stand out. What do you do? So we came up with this idea. We were brainstorming. We came up with this idea, and we said, well, what about if on every Saturday, when we know that the hairdressers are really busy, we go in there and we say, hey, what do you need help with? And we called it a shampoo day. The hairdresser did not let us touch their clients' hair, I can tell you that. But we cleaned a lot, and we did all kinds of things. And then suddenly, we started going, okay, is there anything we can do for you? A lot of the hairdressers would ask. And we said, well, we'll clean your shelf. Do you mind if we kind of organize things a little differently? And they said, oh, sure. So what did we do? We took our competition and we put them on the bottom shelf and put our product up and right smack there, eye levels, increased our sales. So the thing is that it was a lot of fun. We did big shows. We had a hairdresser and educators flying in from all over the world, Great Britain, Canada, all over. And they came in and we did big shows with up to, almost 100,000 people would come to these big shows in San Francisco and all over. And it was really a super great thing that we accomplished. By this time, we started getting approached by people that want to buy our business, because they saw that we had grown a lot. By this time, we had 70, 80 sales reps, and our company was growing rapidly. And at that time, we started talking about it. Was that the direction we want to go? Did we want to sell? And in 2003, I sold my business. And at that time, we had 110 employees. We had 10 stores, and we sold about $25 million in sales. This is what can accomplish when you set your goal, when you're not afraid to work and you work really hard. You can accomplish. There's no reason. I can point out anybody of you guys. You can do this if you have your purpose, you have your goal, and you know what, and you want to do it. So anyway, at that time, I sold my business, and I was home with my little boy. He was a little rascal at that time. Anyway, and so it was fun being home. But this feeling inside of, when you're an entrepreneur, you know it. You have this feeling that I can do this. You look at all these people around you, and you say, why can't I do this? I have a quick question here, because a lot of you guys are tech guys. Do you know who Steve Wozniak is? Okay, a few of you guys. Okay, Steve Wozniak is pretty much the brain behind Apple. He's the one that did all the work that built Apple computer. but he's not the one that is being remembered. You know, I met him several times. He's a really, really nice guy. But people don't really know that. It's all Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs. And why is that? Because Steve Jobs is the person that goes and is in front of everybody and introduces the company. And so the reason why I said that is that you have to, and you can, if you know that your personality is that kind of personality that you don't want to be a Steve Wozniak, okay, so then you are a Steve Jobs. If you know that you cannot be a Steve Jobs, then be the Steve Wozniak. But you can surround yourself with people, and you can start up businesses with people that are maybe different than you, that you have these strengths. Wozniak was to be able to create the computer and do all that stuff, and Jobs was the marketing genius behind it all. So you can do that. You don't have to start alone. You can start with, you know, with friends and family or whoever. You guys can do it. I'm telling you guys, you can do it. So after I was home and I had sold my business, I started kind of getting a little bored. And I was talking to a girlfriend, and we said, well, why don't we start up, you know, selling on Amazon? You know, Amazon is, everybody thinks that Amazon is like the biggest thing ever, and you're going to just be so successful on Amazon. So I started doing that. And with a friend of mine, I had met a person that had this product line. It was a great product line. It was a skincare line, and it was all based on natural products and all organic, and everything it was a great product line. We started selling it, but to sell on Amazon, if that's some of you guys, you know, I've kind of heard that some of you guys would like to start doing that, just a few warning signs with that. Number one is if we took it was $3,000 course, and we took for an amazing selling machine. It's someone that teaches you how to sell everything that you want on Amazon. One of the things that you will realize really quick is that you have to have a niche, and you have to have a really unique product to really make it. Because, you know, when I started selling it, everyone was talking to you about these yoga mats, how great these yoga mats were. They were the best yoga mats, and you can make millions selling these yoga mats. Well, reality is that when you go, and you guys probably buy things on Amazon, when you go in there, how many levels down do you go? Do you circle through all the thousands of people that are selling yoga mats? No, you don't. What you do is you look at the 4 or 5 top ones and figure out maybe the best price, the best quality, or what is in it for you, right? What you want with this. So be careful, but it is a great opportunity. I'm not going to say that it isn't, but it's a lot of work. And Amazon has a lot of rules and regulations. There's all these extra places where you have to pay fees for this and fees for that. And one of the things that we discovered pretty early on is that, well, where are we? Oh, we are number 50. How is anyone going to find us? So then they said, oh, yeah, but if you get involved with this company here, they will help you with your keywords. So then, and the SEO and all this good stuff, we're going to help you with that. So then you pay them to do this stuff, and suddenly you are up there, and they can find you. Well, then you have to be careful with the competitors that you have, because the competitors at times will pretend like they are you. And we had a person in England that coded, I don't know anything about it, but they were able to code our stuff, and all the orders would go, not the orders, but the request would go to them. And then they started promoting their product to these. So there was a lot of things that was going on here. At this time, we were doing about, the best month we had with Amazon was $150,000 for 1 month. That was not the norm at all, I'm telling you that. But also at that time, we spent about $60,000 that month in just, you know, advertising and doing all these things. So after a while, it was like, is this really what I want to do? And you kind of know an entrepreneur by the arrows in their back, because you try on a lot of things and you hope it's stick. And with, you know, my business, Salon Technology, I did that for many years. I did that for almost 20 years, 18 years. But with these other projects and stuff like that, it was like, okay, I tried it, I did it, this isn't for me, so let's move on to the next. My son was born with a cleft palate and a cleft lip. And because of that, he was being bullied because he was different. So I started thinking to myself, he's older now at this time, but I started thinking after I stopped selling on Amazon, I started thinking, what can I do to help my son, or kind of as a gift to him, what can I do? So I decided to write a book, and it was called A Little Different, All Perfect. And I wrote this book more as kind of like a love story to my son, because I wanted him to know that, you know, it was a little different, but he's perfect. And so I did that, and, you know, lo and behold, this book ended up winning the San Francisco Book Festival. And when that happened, it was like, you know, a snowball started rolling. And it was like it started getting people talking to me that I didn't know. People were calling up and asking me questions because, you know, the book won this award. I wrote another book that was called Always Time for Kindness. And that book there is about who we are and listening to our inner self, understanding that we are very special and that we all need kindness and that we always should have time for it. And that book there won some awards, Mom's Choice Award, London Book Festival, and a few other things like that. Then the character in my book, you guys saw the picture of this little boo-boo bear. I saw you smiling when you heard that. And so the little boo-boo bear was a bear that that I created, and I created this whole line of bears where they were all different. They all had different personalities. So that meant that one of the boo-boo bears loved to bake cookies. So, you know, so little girls or little boys that like to bake or whatever, they would want to buy this little boo-boo bear. Mom and Dad bought it for them. So the boo-boo bear was something that was like the character in my books. My third book, you know, All But Not Expired, that was about understanding, you know, people get old, you have grandparents, great-grandparents, and they have an amazing value. And oftentimes they are being put aside, and because we don't have time. And so in my book, it just talks about children and things that you can enjoy with your grandparents, questions that you can ask, and games that you can play, and just stuff like that was in that book, which also was pretty. It was fun. It was a fun experience writing these three books. At this time, I've always been, not always, that's not correct, for 13 years I've been a member of an international entrepreneur group. And if that's what you want to do, networking is very important. These great presenters that was up here with technology and stuff like that, that is not my thing. My thing is, I don't know much about it, and, you know, blessed that we have people that can do that. It's not me. But so I'm a member of an international entrepreneur group. We meet every year in Los Angeles. And last time I was there, last year, there was people from 78 different countries. One of the things that is really unique about this being an entrepreneur and meeting people from all over the world is that, like I said before, being an entrepreneur is lonely. You work these 70, 80 hours, and you want to just run something by someone, and your friends, your family, everybody is like, yeah, that's great, Anita, but we don't really know about that. But when you go to these groups and you network with amazing people that is the same as you all over the world. One of my best friends, Nalisa, she's from South Africa, and I met her 7 years ago, and we have been like sisters. If there's something that with my business, I talk to her. She calls me. She lives in Holland right now, but it's like we always communicate and talk and figure things out together. And so, but the thing is also, you work really, really hard, but you have an amazing reward. Number one, you don't have someone telling you what to do, and that's one of my issues, I guess. Maybe I don't really like being told what to do. And so anyway, I probably wouldn't be really good at working for someone. If I disagree with them, I would speak up. So being an entrepreneur, if you become an entrepreneur, make sure that the reason why you become an entrepreneur is that it's your passion. Because if you become an entrepreneur because you just want to make millions of dollars, that's not going to stick. You might make those millions of dollars, but you're not going to be happy doing it. The thing is that when you're able to become an entrepreneur, be successful, but also give back. Give back to the people around you. Give back to, for me, it was children, and doing all these things for kids and for other family members or whatever it is. Just think about that when you put together your budget, that maybe some of that budget should be given to, you know, maybe an animal shelter or a human shelter, whatever it is, that you do something for others too, because that kind of blesses you. So anyway, I was picking my son up from a school, and one of the moms came over, and she said, you know, your son, I think he was 14 or 15 years old at the time, she said, he's very confident. Why is that? Because I just told you guys that he was being bullied. And so I said, well, maybe that's because of the way that I'm raising him, making him understand that the behavior of someone that's bullying you that's their issue, not his, right? So I came up with this idea of a bully shield, and I was teaching my son that, and I was teaching a lot of kids that when someone, it's kind of like if you have, how I explained it to my son was I took a little Lego, Darth Vader or something like that, and I put him down, and I said, take this ball, and I said, throw the ball. And so he did, and of course he fell down. And then I said, look at it now, and I took it and put it inside a glass. And I said, now roll the ball. And so he rolled the ball. Well, the character is still standing in the glass because there's a shield there, right? So I said, that's what happens when you don't allow the words that are hurtful to come into your heart, because it stops before it hits your heart. So I was talking to these parents about that, and they were asking me, they said, well, can you teach us about this? And so I wrote a book, The Ultimate Anti-Bullying Solution Guides. That book there got to be #2 on Amazon, and in the category that I was in. And it was a lot of downloads and stuff like that. So with that, what happened there is people started contacting me and saying, hey, you know, could you help me with this? And my son is doing this, and my daughter is doing this. What are the signs I'll look for? And all kinds of questions that they have. So anyway, a friend of mine, she suggested that I meet this lady. Her name is Shannon Kring, and she's a producer of movies. She just did a great movie, Women of Standing Rock. It's a fantastic movie. I was crying through the whole movie, but it's still very fantastic. And it's based on a true story and her experience. And so Shannon was a member of. She worked with United Nations, and we met at a big event in Los Angeles, and she came over and we started talking, and she invited me down to Honduras, and so I'd never been there, and I said, yeah, sure. She said, would you go to schools and teach anti-bullying? And I said, yeah, sure. And then she said, it's in San Pedro Sula, and I go, oh. So I'm going online, and I'm like, oh my gosh, murder capital of the world. And I'm like, I maybe not. And my son goes, Mom, we're going because it's the right thing to do. So we went down to Honduras, and we stayed there. And her fiancé, Rene Banjana, he was running for president of Honduras at the time. So I stayed in a very safe area, and my son and I we were very safe. But and I got to go to all these schools. That was very interesting to go to, and I was teaching them. And one time I was looking at all these beautiful children, and I said, how many of you guys have been to Europe? And pretty much 90% of them had already been to Europe. So I was like, okay, this is like really the rich kids here. So, and Honduras is, there's of course rich, and there's very, very poor. So like Jamie said, I also was a member of, started Santa Cruz Children's Charities. And that company, that nonprofit there, we would get a lot of money and get money for children all over the world that was really poor. And so I had a check for a school in Honduras, so for $3,000 that they would be able to use for getting running water in their school, in their bathrooms in their school. So anyway, so an evening we were called, and they said, could Anita come and give the check? And so I thought I was going to go in there and give the check to the principal of the school and say hi and hello and leave. And so they said there will be about 100 men there that will want to listen to you speak. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's fine. So we get there, it was 1,000 people. There was 1,000 people that were all there. And so I'm on stage talking to these people, and I have to tell you, I swear to you, this changed my life. These people, these children, I can almost stop crying. These children were so poor. These kids had half a tortilla and half a cup of coffee. That was their food every day. They had nothing else. And so for me to be able to meet these children and meet these absolutely amazing little kids and their parents that had nothing. And what I didn't tell you was that when I was invited to go there, we were driving up to this area, suddenly, Renee stops the car. And so I said, oh, are we there? And I kind of unbuckle. And he said, no, we have to wait because we have to be escorted into this area. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, if we drive into that area without being escorted, he said, our car will probably be blown up. And so I said, oh, that's an interesting thing. And he said, but don't worry. The guy that's going to be escorting us, he is the principal of the school. And all these children that now, a lot of them had turned to crime, all these children, they, now adults, they really, wouldn't do anything to the principal's car or to the people that he invited in because they were his ex-students. And this was the life that they had to live. So anyway, so I went to this event, and it was a beautiful experience. Every single person there, they would come over. Of course, not every 1,000 of them came over to hug me, but the children just surrounded you. And that was one of the pictures there. You see the kids. They're just so loving, and they're so wonderful. And it was just what changed my life. It really changed my life. So when I came back to the United States, I started up a nonprofit. And the nonprofit was I would go to schools, and I would teach anti-bullying, and I would help teachers with this subject and stuff like that. And then pretty much COVID hit, and so everything got closed down, and I couldn't do my nonprofit anymore. And so now I'm working for, like Jamie said, I'm working for Durango Stone. I'm the director of marketing there, and I also kind of run a lot of the things that are going on there. I enjoy it. My heart is, of course, with the kids, but I really do enjoy it. And if any of you guys have any questions about any of the things that I've done, from starting up my own business and selling it to Amazon, to any of what I've done, I'm more than ready to answer any questions. One thing I want to say is, if you have a chance, check out Nido Cobain. Nido Cobain is the president of High Point University. He came from Lebanon when he was 12 years old, and he became an entrepreneur, and he has run an amazing, his whole life, done great entrepreneurship. And with that, I just want to say that it has been a pleasure to meet you guys, to be able to tell my story. And I'm here, I'm a friend of Jamie, so if you guys want to get in touch with me or you have some questions, I'm definitely here for you.
And we have a little bit of time for some question and answer, but let's go ahead and give a round of applause for Leah. Are there any questions? Raise your hand, I'll bring you the mic. Right over here, come over to you.
You said check out Nido Cobain. Can you spell that for me?
It's Nidoquuiben. And if you just go Nido Q, he'll be all over the place. He has written like 11 books, and he's very good to this.
Good morning. I was wondering, I can relate to when you said it can be very lonely when you have your own business and you're looking for advice sometimes or feedback. Do you still think that focus groups are relevant? Did you ever try that for your business?
Well, focus group it's important, but the one thing that I feel, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So it depends on the focus group. When I'm talking about networking, I'm talking about being around people that you can learn from. So when I go to these events, for instance, during the day, for hours and hours, we just learn everything, the new things, everything from marketing to tax codes and all these things. And then in the evening, we have the privilege of meeting some people really like them and some people could care less. But like last time I went, I got to listen to Kevin Costner talk about his life, Sylvester Stallone, a lot of these people that people have heard about. And it's amazing because pretty much it doesn't matter who you are. It's how you start and what you do, it's kind of still the same. So yes, if the focus group is, if you, for instance, are in, whatever you're doing, if the people around you can increase what you need to know, absolutely. But if you're there and you are the one that talks all the time and teach everybody else, maybe not, because your time is really valuable. And you oftentimes, you know, you work weekends, you work a lot to be able to do certain things. So, so yes, if it can benefit you and you can learn, but also know when enough is enough, because otherwise it turns into like a social club, and you just stick with that, and you might not, you know, get everything that you need. You're welcome.
Are there any more questions? Raise your hand. I'll go here and then there.
So I know you kind of touched on it, like what kind of expanded your Amazon business, but can you go more into detail, like what really helped you like scale your Amazon business?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were selling, you know, I brought up the idea because how they kind of got us into this idea was they were talking about how many yoga mats you can have. Keywords, absolute keywords. And also one of the things with keywords and also the sentences. So the interesting thing that was kind of confusing to me with that was that you would misspell things because people would misspell it. So then you would find these keywords, right? And it's misspelled. And so then people misspell it, and then suddenly you pop up because you misspelled your keywords. Keywords is number one. Also, you do have to pay. The reality is that you do have to pay for that. But also, more than anything, you have to have that extra, whether that is in your marketing, if that is in the pictures that you use of your product, or whatever that is, that one thing, so you stand out. It is so important to stand out. And so with us, one of the product lines that we had that we noticed that we got a lot of attention to, not as much as maybe some of the skincare items, but it's something for psoriasis, because that's a specialty item, right? And so we did that, and then I noticed that we kind of got high up on there. So definitely keywords, and there's a lot of free things on like YouTube and stuff about how to start. Just do that and then learn from different instead of investing a lot of money in this training. And what I did notice was that the people that said that they sold all these $1 million worth of you know, whatever it was, they are now coaches telling you how to sell on Amazon. They're not doing it necessarily themselves, but they're teaching and charging a lot of money for doing that. But if something you want to do in the evening, whatever, but just remember, you have to be unique. You have to be unique.
You have another question here?
I have a question about what are some of your biggest challenges when you were starting your business, and what were some of your biggest accomplishments and techniques throughout your business?
I think the biggest challenges for me is that I'm probably a workaholic. And so that's a challenge, because you really do have to have a balance. And who brought balance into my life was my son. But that was a challenge. The other thing is, of course, when you're starting up and you don't have anything and you have to borrow $10,000 from uncle, you know, that's you better work hard to pay it back with a 10% interest. Yeah, he made some money. And so some money and using it in the right places. A lot of people believe it's kind of like you work on your business, not in your business. And that is a challenge for any entrepreneur, because you could think you can do it much better than anybody else, right? So you work on your business, making sure that all the categories, you have the salespeople, you have the customer service, you have all these warehouse, whatever it is, and like, for instance, when I was doing the import, that's a lot of work with the importing from other countries and stuff. So that was some of the challenges. And what was the other one you asked challenges in?
One more question for that. How did you gain or attain manufacturers to be able to produce your products and sell them?
Well, they came to the first product. They came to me, but one of the things that I did do after a while, we produced our own product line, and that product there it was a beautiful blue packaging, and we had this artwork and stuff like that, and so that product line we had for a while, and it was all natural, and then we sold it to a bigger company. So we did that too within that. And what was you said something about challenges, and then what my...
Yeah, what were some of your biggest accomplishments, and how did you...
Well, I think my biggest accomplishment in a way is when you are coming from a different country and come into the United States, and you're here, and you're able to use, because the United States is an absolutely amazing country to be able to be an entrepreneur in. Back home in Norway, I don't think I could be as successful as I was here. And so I think that the accomplishment was obviously, being able to have your company and grow it to, $25 million and sell it. And then being able to take that money and be able to, for me, help kids and do what is really important for me. A good thing, an exercise that you guys might consider doing, and a friend of mine told me this. He said, write down what is your passion, what is it that you want to do with your life. And if you had like a hobby, you like to knit or you like to dig in the dirt or whatever you want to do, then write down how would you start this business and what would you do? And he said, money is not enough. You have all the money in the world. And we were like, okay, this is great. And we write down this whole mission statement, what we want to do. And then he said, okay, he goes, now you wrote down what your wish is and what you want to do. Now you don't have the money, but still go out and do it, right? So you just have to have that you can do it. And when you believe in yourself, which I believe most of you guys do, you're taking upon yourself to get a great education and taking this class and learning. So I think that all of you guys have what it takes to become an entrepreneur. And also for you girls, you guys can do it, man. I walked in here and I saw these, there wasn't enough girls in here. I know it's tough, but as a female, there are so many opportunities for girl businesses. You guys can get funding. It's so great. You guys can do it.
We have time for one more question. I believe there was one over there. Is that wrong? Thought I saw another hand. Any more questions? I'm sure Anita will stay after just a little bit because it seems like a lot of people have questions for you.
Right.
JB, can you bring up the survey? We have a survey we do need you to complete. And when you walk out the door, you're just going to show Terry back there that you completed that survey, and she's going to get you some swag on the way out. We also have a few more muffins and stuff in the very back if you want to grab. I think all of our fruit's gone. But I do want to thank Anita for coming and speaking to us and our students. We really appreciate it. And please get your phones out and do the survey.
Last for an event, just put CGC Speaker 3. So when I ask for the event, put other and CGC Speaker 3, so that we know the feedback for the different speakers from today.
And we have some more amazing speakers tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. and going to about noon. Our first one is the SBDC. They're coming to talk about starting a business. Then we have a franchise, Fred Astaire Gilbert, which is my dance teacher, so I'll be dancing for you all. And after that, we have another IT entrepreneur coming to talk about entrepreneurship in the IT field.
And there's pizza.
Yes, and we will be providing pizza tomorrow. And water and possibly some cookies, depending on how much money I have.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and again, once you finish the survey, go ahead and show it on your way out. My class, please come back to class. Thank you, bye.